The biggest takeaway I've had the last year is you can't be average in any business you're in. If you're going to be average, you're going to get what most people get.
Welcome to the FlyWheel Effect, the podcast where ambition meets expertise in the world of luxury home services. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a small business owner, or a forward-thinking professional, this is your platform for growth, profit, and prosperity. Each episode, we dive deep into how to leverage data for smarter business decisions and share insights that help you transition from technician to visionary. Let's jump in.
Welcome to the FlyWheel Effect, your home for as an entrepreneur, small business owner, and luxury home service provider, to where you can learn to grow, profit, and become more prosperous. I'm Brent Sonnek-Schmelz, here with my co-host, Matt Bernath. We are hosting our first on-air guest, Paul Starkey. Paul Starkey is a legend in the custom integration market. He's worked for some of the best vendors out there, and also founded two great companies, Vital, where Matt and I now have acquired it and are running it, and also Bravas, which is one of the most successful roll-ups of integration companies in the market today. Now, in his next life, Paul has now founded two new companies. One is PrepTech, which helps custom integrators find great technical talent and train them for even better quality of service. And also Fenco, which is a build out of fencing companies throughout the Southeast, where he is installing fences at an astonishing rate. I don't see him out there with a hammer or a shovel, but he is facilitating some great work. So welcome, Paul. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Brent. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to ideate with you and Matt, and looking forward to talking to your audience here.
Thank you. Yeah, and Matt, how are you today? Are you ready for this conversation? I know you talking to Paul is always one of your great joys.
Yeah, doing amazing. Paul's a good visionary to be associated with, and I love always hearing his perspective on things.
Now, interestingly today, you guys, Matt, you're full native Californian. Paul, you lived in California a long time. But today, an interesting point, here in New Jersey, we had a 4.8 earthquake this morning.
Wow.
Which was shaken more than I think I've ever shaken before. It was pretty.
14 years in California, I never experienced that.
Now you're enjoying the hurricanes in Florida? Is that what?
Yeah, I've switched weather or environmental threats. So at least I'm not back in Kentucky where the tornadoes and all the high winds have been. So
it's crazy.
Kentucky's not so bad. I actually went to the eclipse last time. I think it was in Kentucky 7 years ago. This couple days, I'll hopefully be in Vermont to see it. But that's always a fun thing too. Awesome. Are you guys going to see the eclipse anywhere? Either of you?
No.
I don't have an eclipse party planned, but it sounds like a great idea, Brent. I'm usually in the dark time anyway, so.
All right, good. So Paul, as we get started, tell us a little bit about PrepTech and what you're trying to do with that company.
Well, let me start with the premise, Brent. I mean, my last 10 years or more have been kind of observing problems and then trying to fit solutions to them. And the problem that PrepTech set out to address was difficulties in finding talent and growing our workforce in custom integration. And my simple theory was, if we could start to widen that bandwidth, because there's not much of an infrastructure for trade schools that feed us directly, that we could make a big difference by adding 1,000, 1,500 techs a year outside of our industry. So no more poaching, no more trading players, that kind of thing, but actually bring people in that are high potential, actually unskilled workers to some degree. So that was the premise. Yeah, it was a 2-year development. The last year we've been heavily engaged in the apprenticeship part of that, creating apprentice candidates. We're trying to leverage Helen and my connections. I always say, 85% of getting jobs.
Helen's your partner, right?
Helen Henneveld, who's been a 35-year vet, probably the first female tech in our business, written books, has done online training for, gosh, close to 20 years now. Just very talented lady. And it's been a pleasure to work with her and kind of put this platform together. And we had 4,200 applicants just in the last 10 months. And, only 2 or 3% make it to the interviewing line, if you will, for our employers. But we use our connections to help these young people land great careers. And we've just been blown away with the quality of the candidates we're getting and the successes they're having.
So, do you think your goal, your purpose for your company is more to prepare the candidates, or because of some gap you saw with the integrators and their inability to hire and train and manage technicians?
I think it's multifaceted. I think there's a difficulty in finding, and to be honest with you, most integrators aren't looking for the candidate that we are. They're looking for somebody who's been in the industry. We exclude everybody that's working in our industry. We look outside. We look for aptitude, potential, attitude. We do in-depth assessment. We do a series of interviews, but they also invest 4 to 5 weeks with us developing their what we call profile, insight profile. Which culminates with all the things we learned through the assessment. They do some personal mission statements, some video. It's a learning process for them as they get it introduced to our training platform. We do offer 40 hours of online fundamentals training. So I think we had to check a lot of boxes, not just preparing or communicating or marketing to those clients or those candidates, but actually finding them, vetting them, preparing them, sorting out those that were 7 or below on a scale of 10. We tried to define 5-star and 4-star recruits.
Now,
Uh,
is that mostly because it's hard to finding them? So I'm just trying to bring this back to the integrator, right? And
Yeah.
Matt, former integrator, be great to get your perspective on this. But my view is part of the problem that you're solving is that integrators are really bad at HR, right? That's finding and training good candidates that are going to succeed in their environment, but also being patient enough to let them work through the process. Is that a fair assessment?
Unfortunately, it's an emergency hire for the most part. It's not a proactive process. To your point, I don't know if they're bad at HR. They just have none. They're small
Right.
companies,
Same.
and so they're part-time involved in recruiting and interviewing and sorting it out. But the other side of it is that they only do it really when somebody leaves or when they're in a dire situation. So it's not very strategic on their part. So it's much easier to run a local ad, even if you want an entry level person. And who responds to their ads? It's people in the industry. It's people who got experience because that's what the ad says. That's not what our ad said. Our ad says, do you want to join to become a home technology installation professional? And that's what we seek. So our ad is different.
You're providing the bench. You're providing the pipeline of talent. Matt, what did you do back when you were an integrator?
Yeah, good question. And I'd like to actually add to what I think Paul was saying. In many cases, it's an emergency hire, not just because they lose somebody, but someone throughout the organization or multiple someone says, we have too much work to be done, right? And so there's another issue, which is a lack of leading indicators. Now, this is different for our vital members because they have leading indicators that tell them when they should be hiring so that it isn't an emergency. But the vast majority of integration companies out there have today needs on the production department that are disconnected from tomorrow needs that the sales department is creating, right? So the sales department is creating a future need, or in some cases, a future change, just depending on how the sales department is working. And ultimately, most integration companies are just making decisions based on how busy they are right now. So, in my organization, before we were vital members, we didn't have any of those leading indicators. So we were running the same way that every other integration company runs, which is, shoot, we feel like we're busy and therefore we need to hire somebody and we don't have time to train them. So therefore we want somebody who has skills. But we were bitten so many times by hiring a pre-skilled technician who, had so many bad habits, or, there was all kinds of issues. Eventually we made the decision to just feed the bottom, is what I called it, which is always just be looking for talent out there in the marketplace that could be trained to do the work that we're doing. And that's what eventually ended up helping us. And once we became vital members, then of course we had a much more strategic way to make those decisions. But ultimately hiring, filling those entry level positions like Paul was mentioning is, in my opinion, the most sustainable way to grow these businesses.
But it sounds like for both of you that most integrators are not willing to take that path. It sounds like a lot of work and is relatively scary, right?
Yep. A lot of them don't have the standards or training practices in place to be able to take someone who's green and make them successful.
And that's, Paul, that's the gap that you're filling with PrepTech, right?
It is a gap. And what we've learned in this process is what we're addressing is probably a small part of the real challenge. The real challenge ultimately, Matt kind of hit on it, is the tech team development. It's creating an environment where, when you hire somebody that's high potential, that they're going to be one of your lead techs in 2 to 3 years. They're going to be a service manager at some point. They're going to be a programmer or a designer, or, not only a lead tech, but, maybe even an operations manager. I mean, the beauty of the vital growth model, and Matt has this in his hands, which is, Matt shows a staffing model that goes from 1 million to 10 million, and how many people they got to add, and what kind of positions and what kind of specialties come into place as organizations grow. Well, that is inside opportunity. Those new positions are opportunities for people you're moving up the ladder. And we don't do a great job as an industry teaching it, preaching it to our employees, and then committing to the development that's required. And a lot of it's outside of product knowledge and know-how to install something, or specific, hands or power tool skill sets. A lot of these are soft skills. It's alignment. It's motivation. So, what I had got a much greater understanding of in the last couple of years of being around this is that the whole tech team development process needs to be amplified, needs to be part of our culture within the companies, and there needs to be a plan. And I can tell you, Vital can quantify exactly what that means to these companies. We know what tech productivity is to the bottom line. So it is probably a more holistic opportunity, Brent, than I would have thought 2 years ago. It includes mentorship. It includes, developing strong team members who are aligned to productivity goals. So I see that as, we're touching two of the areas of PrepTech right now. One is the apprentice program. The other is we take all these services, the assessment, the skill development validation, the fundamentals training. We offer those as deployment services, right? So if somebody is doing a good job of finding talent, we offer those services a la carte. But the third leg of the stool has become this tech team development, which we think is the ultimate. I mean, I got a new mission, like I need one at my age, right? But
You need one, Paul.
I believe that we can claim back $1 billion of tech productivity in the next 5 to 7 years. $1 billion of incremental, that's unbilled tech hours. I think as an industry, and that's only probably getting 500 companies involved. So
and when you see that, you mean is, just understand what you mean. You mean that techs that were either wasting time or not focused properly on their work, that will be able to make them more efficient and productive in their actual time that's built.
Yeah, because here's the math real quick. 1,000 hours a year per tech out of his 2,080 that he's paid on payroll.
Yeah. They
go unbilled. They don't get billed to the clients, right? Now, some of that PTO, meetings, training, that's legit. I mean, it's the cost of doing business. but there's at least 250 hours per technician per year that can be reclaimed through managing and aligning the employees and having a more productive team. And Matt sees the accounting side of this every month. And I can tell you it's there for the taking. It's not rocket science, but it's something that we got to stop letting 3,000 companies invent solutions for it. And we have to spoon feed the techs every day what they need. So I think there's huge upside. This is, I mean, when you talk about $1 billion of impact, that's huge. It's huge in our industry and it's there. And it's, I'll relate it more to a single tech. I think there's $20,000 to $25,000 a year per tech that can be reclaimed in productivity. And
Matt, what are you seeing when you're talking to all the integrators out there, both the ones that are working with Vital and that are not? How do people perceive their tech productivity?
Well, the moment we start talking about productivity, I think everybody defaults to more work, right? So yeah, especially when we bring that up to the technicians, it's like, hey guys, we're going to have a meeting about productivity. And they're like, boss, we can't get any more work done than we're doing now, right? Like everybody's running a red line. So I think that's the initial barrier, is to start talking about productivity in a different way. And, you know, I think oftentimes people think of productivity as just getting more work done in the amount of time we have. And to some degree, that's true. But in our industry, what we've seen as the low hanging fruit for improving productivity is actually reducing the unbillable time, right? The windshield time, the time at the office, the unproductive and unbillable time.
Mhm.
You know, you're sending your best technician and possibly a helper out to a Home Depot, you know, and that's a 3-hour round trip by the time they get everything they need, right? And that's happening 2 or 3 times a week. So it's a lot of that stuff that is really the low hanging fruit. It isn't so much putting our thumb on them to get them to do more work in the amount of time that they're on the job site.
Yeah, but it is a sensitivity to time. I mean, take a simple thing. 2 guys in a truck stop to gas up the vehicle. And one guy gasses it up. The other guy goes in. He's going to get the Red Bulls. He's going to get the beef jerky. He's going to buy a lottery ticket. He's going to yick and yak. And at the end of the day, we probably spent 15 minutes at the gas station for 2 guys. That's 30 minutes. Even at $25 an hour, you know, $50 an hour, there's $25 shot for those guys gassing up the truck on company time. Some guys,
And the opportunity cost of not being able to bill for that time. Too,
yeah,
Paul.
absolutely.
I mean, you're talking about hard costs. What about the opportunity?
I'm not always talking about leaning up against the truck, vaping on your phone for 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes you lose on the job site is huge. It's a huge cost to the company. And who's underwriting any of the risk of productivity? It's the house. It's the owner of the business. If we miss our estimate, we run over on a project, it's all against the house. We're not bought in we're not paid as employees any penalty. In fact, sometimes we're getting overtime, so we're even double down on the risk to the house. So there's a whole set of economics that were really discovered really through the Vital process. And now I'm on the other side, the tech side, saying, wow, we can address these things. I started writing down the other day, and I came up with probably 22 little labor saver, little labor killers that, like Matt says, they're not difficult to put in place. They're disciplines. They're things you got to be aware, cost you, and then you avoid them. But it's huge. I mean, when you buy a product in this business and you pay 55 cents for it and you sell it for $1, that doesn't change much project to project, but you know it's going to happen. When you quote a project, and if it's a fixed bid project, and you go in there, you don't know. You might get $1 for your labor, but you don't know if that dollar is going to cost you $1.20. It's going to cost you 80 cents. It's going to cost you 60 cents or 40 cents. You don't know till the project is over. And I see the same parallel in my fence business. I got into rolling up fence businesses because it was so close of an analogy to CI, which I was restricted from doing any more roll-ups. Yeah. So So I pivoted. I said, hey, I found a little business that was a lot less sophisticated than custom integration, but had a lot of the same economic business model attributes. And they fight the same dilemma on the labor component. Any home services business with this labor component is at risk when it comes to labor management and labor margins. So
And
huge.
What's that like at Fenco? Like you don't have PrepTech feeding you candidates. You're having to find your own.
What I mean, the hiring, it's been a little bit easier to find workers because the skill level is different. It's more of a manual labor skill than you don't have the higher intellect, electronics, troubleshooting, you know, that kind of thing. So you get a little different candidate. We had to adjust our ads, which my experience running ads for 2 years at PrepTech helped. So we've been able to generate it. The biggest thing we did, we inversed the compensation plan. So we're not looking for wage earners. We're looking for productivity partners, and we pay them. We pay our fence guys minimum wage, and then they get a percentage of the revenue for installing. So if they get a job done in halftime, they make twice their wage rate.
Oh,
So
so you're actually doing a rev share. When you say productivity share, you're not like how many feet of fence you install in
no,
a given day. It's
no,
literally they're partners with the sales team.
that's right. We cap the cost that the company's going to have because that's the percentage of revenue that is possible. If the hours go way over, their average wage rate goes down. There's a big gap between, the typical fencer is going to make 18 to $21 typically. Minimum wage is like 7.25 in Georgia and South Carolina, that kind of place. So they have a risk gap below that average rate, but most of our people are making a lot more money than they were when we were paying it by the hour. It's incredible because now they think ahead. They get done with the project with 2 or 3 hours in a day. They're at the next project, surveying the site and getting things ready to be super productive the next day. So it's just a mentality shift.
Did you lose some people when you changed?
We've only been on it like 6 weeks. The morale's been pretty good. We've got 3 teams that are doing it. 2 of the 3 teams are loving it. We may lose the third team, but from a recruiting standpoint, I'm not advertising for $21 an hour wage earners. I'm advertising for people that want to make $32 to $40 an hour because they're highly productive. So I'm attracting A players instead of C and D players. So I think there's a parallel in CI for this, but it's important to know that this labor aspect, and I think Matt would agree, is probably the most important thing to manage in these, what I call labor-based home services kind of businesses. Because this is what the electricians, the plumbers, the HVAC, the windows and doors guys, the landscapers, everybody that has a high labor component, is dealing with this dilemma. And so I'm really excited about it. If you can't tell,
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of a breakthrough, but we're developing content right now that we'll be training our field technicians in the fencing business on a daily basis. We'll end up beta testing it also in the CI channel. So I just think we could all do more. I mean, Matt and his group has done a fantastic job of coaching owners on this issue, but it's got to be both a top down and a bottoms up solution. And that's what we hope to hit on. I mean, when you're a hammer, every problem's a nail, right, Brent? So, I have to thank my vital roots for letting me seek out nails in other industries.
Yeah. So recently, just yesterday, I think there was an article in the Wall Street Journal. This kind of gets back to what you're saying. And that article in the Wall Street Journal said basically that Gen Z is making a huge push into the trades as opposed to choosing not to go to college. They actually said a couple interesting stats that the ranks of students studying construction trades has grown over 23% since 2013. And they're seeing it's driven by cost of college, everything else. And that, like, they highlight one kid that's a welder, and he thinks within 3 or 4 years of college graduation, he's going to be making six figures, which is tremendous. Starting salary is $50,000-$60,000, and starting salary professional services, the typical college grad job, is under 40, right? So it's a tremendous opportunity for young people to enter the labor force and the trades now. And you're right there on the cusp of it in two ways, both on your fence company and with PrepTech. Are you seeing a lift in those kind of 18 to 25-year-olds really getting excited about coming into the trades?
Well, I don't know if it's excitement coming into the trades as much as probably avoiding the college or the more formal education route, right? I have grandkids that are in their early 20s and boys specifically. And if you're not going to college, it's a tough environment out there. It's hard to find a 40-hour a week job that has great promise in career opportunities. So a lot of these kids are pasting 2 20-hour jobs together to make enough money to live outside of mom and dad's couch, right? So this the trade, which is been, because we've been in such a hot construction market, the last few years, has had shortages. So they're needy. I mean, electricians are needy, and plumbers are needy, and HVAC, and when you look at the numbers, I was looking at how many people are employed in those trades. And one of the sources I just added up, I guess it was 18 or 19 of those trades. And it was like over 3 million people that were employed in those trades. And they're all in need right now. And we're competing against that. And we being custom integrators, run so far under the radar in terms of being known. I mean,
Yeah.
the sales job we have to do on people outside of our industry just to explain what we do and how we do it and what the opportunities are. I mean, it's significant. They come in. I mean, keep in mind, the users of our products are country club and high affluent people, right? Nobody's buying 50, 100, 200, $300,000 systems if they're not really, really high net worth and high income earning. That's not where our techs come from. Our techs come from kind of the opposite end of the economic spectrum. They don't have country club parents. They don't have influence driven parents who can get them jobs. So they're high work ethic. They're working hard. They're doing, they're showing up. The ones that you want are showing up, good attitude, want to grow, want to get ahead, don't know about these opportunities. So it's not that this generation doesn't want to work. They want to work and they want to be in successful, satisfying careers. And we have one of the better ones. I mean, our small companies offer faster advancement. And as you can see with that growth model I was referring to earlier, doors open up inside the company. They can join larger companies and sit in the same chair for a long time, in their little,
Yeah.
single digit raises per year. That's not what we offer as an industry. So I, I love,
And
I
when
love,
you say industry, in this case, you're also applying that to Fenco too. It seems like you have opportunities in other services that you're encountering as well. That
yeah,
can be real.
we got a similar thing. I mean, we got leadership positions, we have service positions as you grow. Most of the companies, the fence companies are usually a couple guys, a truck and two guys. And there's a lot of that out there. They're way under, $300,000 a year total revenue. We're trying to build 6, 8, $10 million companies in the markets we're going in. From those companies, our first company we bought was 300,000. It'll do 3.6 million this year.
Wow,
This
that's
is
awesome.
this is the third year. So we're really buying into the 10X rule, and what you need to do to scale. But, those things apply in CI. I guess the biggest takeaway I've had in the last year is you can't be average in any business you're in. If you're going to be average, you're gonna get what most people get. And Matt knows what average is in CI, and he knows what below average. A lot of people that are below average still think they're doing well in CI. They haven't seen what the best 20% do. And the best 20% do more. They market harder, they sell harder, they develop their tech teams harder, they invest in financial wisdom and operational excellence. You can't mail it in anymore. I don't care if you're in the fence business and in the electronics installation business, if you mail it in, you're going to get mail in results. And what I love about what you guys are doing in the home services arena is you're thinking big. You're thinking big. You're setting big targets. You're helping a lot of companies. I've struggled with that, getting outside of my one person or two person impact. And it takes a big idea, a big vision, and a big commit. I heard something the other day that just wowed me. And it was like the 4 levels of effort. One of the worst is no effort. No, I put no effort. I did not, no action, right? The other one is I saw something I knew needed action. I avoided it. I just didn't take the action. The third is average effort or average action. In the fourth, which is where we all want to be, is massive action. That's where you want to do more than anybody else out there. You want to be that company. You want to have employees that go beyond. You don't want, the worst of those three, you would think is no action, but it's really average. It's being average because too many of us, 90% of the companies are stuck being average.
Yeah.
But
hey, if more people take massive action, it will bring up that average level. That would be pretty cool too, right?
yeah. Well, I love it. I was trying to get into fifth gear and just cruise here, a few years ago. And now I'm back in first or second gear, I think, trying to figure out how I apply, 10X or massive action every day. But I tell you, once you catch it, it's like contagious.
Yeah.
I know Matt's moving.
Yeah, I wanted to add something. You brought up, Paul, about just the attraction to these industries for the technicians, and in a big way, they just don't even know they exist. One of the things that's really interesting, and this goes for all luxury home services. So it doesn't matter if you're building luxury pools or installing these big beautiful glass doors or windows or window treatments. When you're working in these luxury homes, we'll call them technicians, but they're all all different shapes and sizes. They're exposed to a whole nother world that as you pointed out, they weren't otherwise exposed to, because that's not the upbringing they grew up in. And I think that's also pretty fascinating for a large number of them. They get to see a different world, and they also get to live in that world. And frankly, I think they learn a lot from it. It allows them to level up in their own way as humans. It allows them to have dreams they maybe didn't have before. And I've recognized that certainly in just custom integration, that the level that these people dream gets higher and higher, because they recognize that there's not a huge difference between where they are today and where they want to be. They just have to dream there. And I think that's one maybe benefit that isn't discussed often about being around luxury home services, is that it's just this next level of dreaming that these employees get to do.
I 1,000% agree, Matt. We try to do a 30, 45-day check-in with our new apprentices, and we've had dinners and brought them together, and the excitement and the enthusiasm and the wow factor they get for being in these homes, being able to see the lifestyles literally of the rich and famous, being able, I remember one of our new hires, he said their foyer was bigger than my mom and dad's whole house. He goes, it just blows them away. It's aspirational. The amount of contact they actually come in with the clients kind of impressive too. Even some of our youngest people, 2 weeks, 4 weeks on a job where, encounter the clients. So we spend a lot of time coaching them, what to say, not to say. I always was told as a kid, well, you don't have any common sense. And then I found out common sense isn't something you just acquire. It's something you have to learn. It's something that has to be exhibited, or, you have to experience. So a lot of this daily training sound bites is, hey, how do we get people to think like we think, to understand how to react to situations, situational training, getting the same heart, if you will, for things. That's People say you can't train on it. I disagree. I think it's what training is all about. It's not about all technical information. If we can make better human beings out of people, that will affect their home life, their friend life, their life outside of work. And, the better they are as human beings at work, the better they're going to be outside. And I don't think we invest enough in those kind of things. I'm older than most people that are probably watching this podcast or listening to it. And, I never thought about those things till my seventh decade. So it's like, come on, it's, and nobody offered to train me on them either. So it's, we always laugh about 3,000 companies, all with individual experiments, learning there. Well, how about 300 million people in the US all having their own personal experiences? Same deal, right? So
Yeah.
I agree with you, Matt. The environment that we work in custom integration is undersold, underpresented, and, just ask some of the techs that are working that field. I think they generally love their jobs. I think they love the situation they're in. And it's not mundane. It's not running Romex every day. It's not solder joining pipes or PVC. It's highly flexible. It's every day's a challenge. You can go as far as you possibly can in every company you're in. I didn't know all this when I was looking for a job. I'd probably be a tech instead of a salesman.
Yeah.
Does that help you? Have you found that pitch that Matt's talking about? Have you used that in PrepTech or even in Fenco?
Oh yeah, because we've lived it, Brent. We've lived the after hire, because we really believe, hiring's one thing, but deploying's another. You got to onboard. You got to get the right mentorship. You got to be able to skill validate and get people out started on a track. So that, to me, it's listening. When people come in, it's not about just getting the product and the people out the door every day. Everybody does that, right? It's about how are you affecting that person? And you got to listen. You got to ask, you got to listen, you got to learn. I spent 3 days this week with one of our new hires in the fence business, happened to be on the sales side. I don't know who learned more, me or him. Every day I try to learn more, because if you don't, you get behind, and it's only by learning can you change your behavior and your results. So it's very much part of our process.
And I'm looking right now on the employment market where, just, was it this morning? The new employment numbers came out. We're down to 3.8% unemployment. Way more jobs were created and hired in the past month and quarter than were expected. After COVID, where we had a situation where everyone realized they can go make money as a gig worker or an influencer or something, TikTok or whatever it is these days. We have a situation where you have to provide a positive work environment to have any sort of customer retention, right? You have to offer the ability for people to grow, to feel meaning, and to earn a living. And if you're not doing those things, you're going to have some crazy churn. And churn is probably the most expensive thing there is for a business that no one really pays attention to.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what low employment numbers will ultimately mean to us. I think what we try to do at PrepTech is we're trying to upgrade. We're taking people out of, they may only be coming over for a dollar or $2 an hour, but that's not why they're moving into CI or into our fence guy. This because we're promising much more. We're promising advancement. We're promising a path. I like to
Exactly.
think of sell these things as careers, not jobs. I
Mhm.
mean, jobs are, I don't know how many careers. I mean, we created 300,000 new jobs in the economy. How many careers did we create? Are those service jobs? We got more traffic through Chick-fil-A and Chipotle and some of those places, or there was some good content in an article you shared with me, because a lot of those jobs, like welding jobs and everything, those have been going to China. That's where the work's been going, right? So to see those kind of skills, spiking up, that's a great trend. I mean, we're hiring. What's so cool about CI, I mean, it's not so much in my fence business, but it's always a 50% blue collar, 50% white collar job. It's kind of a pale blue job, in my opinion. It's handyman kind of skills, power tools that one day, but it's a lot of brain work too. It's a lot of technology, and it's very unique in that way. And so it's not, I don't think it's going to be as mundane, as a comparison. And I'm not, trying to put down welders or plumbers or anybody else. I'm just saying the nature of the work is exciting. We probably have 10 really great selling propositions for positions in custom integration. Well, we don't sell them because we're out hiring guys that already work somewhere else in the business. So it's tough. If we hire 2,000 new techs a year as an industry, for one hired new tech for 2,000 company, that's probably it. Probably electricians hire that in a week.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we're not trying to carve out a lion's share of people from a market share of the workforce. We're,
During
we're,
CI.
we're with the right quality, the right quality of people, but we need a better system. Our system, is pretty lame in terms of feeding our businesses. Even the trade schools might get a low voltage program. It's not really specific to what, always specific to what we do.
I agree. It's
So
it's it's
I'm too old to fix that problem. I'm not going to go in and try to change the whole education, system, but we can market ourselves better,
um
and we can attract better people than we have.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that come to mind. I agree with you on a lot of that stuff, Paul. I think it's interesting, Brent, that you brought up those numbers, because I sort of feel like the employment and unemployment numbers are a bit of a fallacy, because we're up against this population issue, right? Where we just have too few people to fill the jobs. And
Mhm.
so I think, persistently, at least through the end of the decade, from what I'm hearing from a lot of economists and, people a lot smarter than me, we're just stuck with that reality. And so I think we're going to continue to see these low unemployment numbers and, high employment numbers. The reality, I think, AI is going to change that perspective, meaning that although AI might shift some people's work, we'll get more productivity out of the workforce, such that it will free up, I think, some of that population to be retrained into other work. And my belief is that skilled trades will benefit from that. People will be retrained, or they'll be forced to be retrained into some skilled trades. So I think that's interesting. And then on Paul's point, about the fact that we just don't market ourselves well, I think there's two opportunities. We could call them issues, but I think they're opportunities specific to all luxury home services, but also custom integrators. We need to do a better job of leading our teams. So we have to grow ourselves as leaders, and we have to market better. And I think those two solutions, doing a better job of marketing and a better job of leading our teams, will allow us to attract just naturally better talent, because the best talent out there want to work for the best leaders. And many home services businesses are led by really talented craftsmen, but those folks in general have not put a lot of emphasis on becoming incredible leaders. And I think that needs to shift.
And how do we do that? How do we help our industry create better leaders? I think that's the question. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily people are going to do it on their own. It's how do we give them the motivation to do so? And, to your point about the shifting economy, we have to also provide our teams a lot of motivation to keep working because they do have other options. Those employment numbers, the crux of it is, hey, you got to compete for your workforce. You can't just say you're lucky you have a job anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And leadership is a big part of that. And I'm
Yeah.
curious how you think we're going to build that leadership pipeline.
I think a part of it is just visibility and understanding that leadership plays a key factor in attracting and keeping great people. Because while some of these owners can attract good talent, sometimes once that talent gets into the business and realizes the dreams aren't big enough to fit their own dreams inside of there, they move on to a company that has bigger dreams so that they themselves can dream larger.
I think in leadership, we always think of leadership of influence and that kind of thing. I think creating an environment of inspiration, I think we got to be able to inspire people in a way that probably think outside the box, do it in a way that, it is an everyday. I'm doing everyday training. I'm inspired, and I really don't need to take it, I don't think, but I'm taking it, enjoying it. And I see what it's doing to the team. I mean, we need to create those environments. It's not about product and people out the door. It's about, are they inspired to be there long term, as a place they love to be and want to contribute, as opposed to I'm in at 7:01 and I'm out at 4:01. We've got to create more dynamic and exciting environments. And I think that's an investment in the people with resources that, let's not have 3,000 companies try to go out and invent. Let's get out of that mode. Matt's doing a good job on the top down, I could call it. And we need a bottoms up program, Hey, maybe together, the three of us could work something out that would really be cool to solve that problem. But, I just think it's there for the taking. To me, it seems obvious, but until somebody probably sees good examples of it, and we can clone it and replicate it and make it happen. Who doesn't want happy employees? Who don't want the most productive people on the planet? Who doesn't want to work in an environment that wins all the time? Who doesn't want to be a winner? I don't think people nearly, but we're stuck with the average or less. So, I think that's the mold we got to break, Brent. And I salute you guys and your company for continuing to hammer on that. And there's more work to do. There's more work in the tech area. There's probably work in the sales area. There's work in the finance and operations area. We'll get there eventually, but
I don't know. I think the journey for greatness never ends, right? There's always that next level. And that's what makes it awesome.
Yeah. It does. It does. I mean, the truly great athletes or the truly great performers, they
never stop.
They ever retire, right? I mean, they just, it's the drive. It's the part of, the great part of life is the pursuit. It's not always the end goal. It's, making a difference every day. It's pulling other people up. It's, my biggest aha moment 10 years ago was, hey, it's not really about you. It's about others. What can you do to affect others? The $1 billion that I'm talking about having an impact on, probably a little small fraction of that will go in my pocket. But knowing that there's $1 billion, I always joke with my friend Steve that we got started with the vital thing is that argue about how much influence we made or impact we made during the 10 years of Vital that we worked together. And I always said, I know it was a quarter billion. It was like 250 million for at least 50 companies. And I know we rubbed off on more than 50 companies, but we always argue about that number. But I like to think that there's an impact to what we're doing. And you guys have taken it 3x, 4x, who knows what from an impact standpoint. So I think more of us were committed to making an impact. This thing would become a lot easier.
Yeah, I think that's Matt's vision too. He's all about impact.
Yeah.
Right.
You brought up something there, Paul, that I thought was interesting. You said that we need to inspire people, which I wholeheartedly agree with. And you, right after that, you said, I'm taking this daily training and I don't even need to, right? And I bet if we had the time to talk about it, there's a dream behind that. There's a motivation behind that, right? And all you need to do is say, yes, there is, because I'm sure there is. But if we dug into that, we could explore exactly what that motivation is. And it reminded me of a podcast I listened to this last week, a neurobiologist who also is a doctor of psychology. So she's approaching things in very interesting ways. And she was explaining this concept of neuroplasticity, right? Where forever in our lives, we can create these new connections in our brain, and they're actual physical connections. So she was explaining how they work. And it's like building a wall, right? Like one brick at a time. And then eventually this wall is built. And what she was explaining, which is really interesting, is when someone has a dream or a goal, they're willing to stick through the learning process while those connections are being made in their brain. And then eventually that connection is made and it's just like, boom, everything's working, right? And so I think to your point, getting people to stick through the process of learning, which can be really painful or time consuming,
yes,
it requires that goal or it requires that motivation. And it's up to the leader to inspire that. It's up to the leader to unpack the dreams and aspirations of their team so that when they put their team in front of this training or education that you're talking about, they sit through it and they build all those neural pathways that didn't exist before. So I thought that was a really interesting connection that you made there.
Well, it is. And I can tell you the other influence, there's two influences. It's knowing that your management or your ownership is 1,000% committed. That helps. It's also the daily accountability. When you're in a group of 8 or 10 people and you're the only one that didn't do the homework assignment last night, there's a little pressure there. So it's kind of almost 3-4 dimensional piece, where leadership has to be a great example and engaged and willing to commit the same time and effort. There's got to be group accountability. And then somewhere along the line, you have to connect enough dots to say, I'm really inspired to this. You may not always know why you're excited about it or it gets to you, but it does. I mean, it gets to me. I mean, I still cry in movies, so yeah, on that kind of sap. So, if you get on the right thing, it gets the juices flowing. If you get other people showing you new things that you had never thought about or even considered, it raises the bar. And that's a good life. If every day you can be better than the day before, that's a great life. So I think we got to give more of our people across the board, not just management, not just the ones we deem to be leaders. I really trust that any employee in a business can be a leader. I do. I think we all have leadership potential.
I think it's great. The goal, I think, for every company that we should work with is incubate the leadership potential of your entire team, right? That would be a tremendous outcome. And by the way, what that also does is it gets every business owner out of being a slave to their job and being able to build what they really want to build, which is a great business and a great life.
Imagine that, everybody pulling the wagon instead of just a few.
They're going pretty fast, pull a lot of weight. Well, this has been great. Paul, thank you for your time. Matt, it's great as always.
Thank you both.
This has been a great Flywheel Effect episode, and I'm looking forward to, Paul, we're I'm pretty sure that you're going to be our most common guest. So, but we'll see you again soon.
Well, thanks, Brent. This has been a real enjoyment for me. And I love anytime I get to talk to you guys one-on-one or together, it's just awesome. So keep up the good work. And I look forward to more insightful guests in the future.
And we'll see you.
Thanks,
see
Paul.
everyone out
Appreciate
there.
it.
Yep. Thank you, Paul. And we'll see you all in a few weeks. Please share this podcast if you thought it was useful. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the FlyWheel Effect. Our journey through the intricate world of luxury home services continues to be fueled by your passion for excellence and innovation. If you found value in our conversations today, don't forget to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. More insights and resources. Visit us online at growwithvital.com. Until next time.